Folks, welcome back to another episode of The Fallen Badge. Today we're going to look at the murder of Officer Anthony Dia, Toledo, Ohio Police Department.
Is my family along?
Officer Dia was 26 years old. He was married, had 2 kids, and he loved dogs. Actually, animals of any kind, but dogs seemed to be his favorite. Now, our story is going to be set in Toledo, Ohio. Now, it's set right up there on the state line with Michigan. Right there, just a rock's throw away from Lake Erie. And with his dying words, he was thinking of his family. I can only imagine those last few seconds. You're thinking about all the things you're not going to get to do with your wife and your kids. Maybe even wondering why in the world somebody would shoot you. Now, the person that did this, as usual, there doesn't seem to be anything good about him. Had a bunch of run-ins with the law, been arrested, convicted, just a cornucopia of crimes that this fella committed. I think his main problem was he just wasn't happy. So he took it out on everybody else. It's just a shame. You got to be so selfish you want to take the good down with you. Now this fella who's the villain in this story, his life's just full of encounters with law enforcement that seem to be related to alcohol or some other type of drug. Now, he lived up in Michigan for a while, Lenawee County, which sits there on the border with Ohio. Now, he'd had a felony assault and a resisting arrest and obstructing police incident up there, and a DUI arrest. It looks like he had another DUI. He lived up in a little town of Clayton, Michigan, on West Beecher Road during some of these arrests. Now, when he came back to Toledo, same thing, public intoxication, just a nuisance to those around him. I don't know what his backstory is, why he was so miserable. Now, the one in Toledo, he's drunk, allegedly drunk, and he's walking down the street and he stops in this lady's yard over on Eleanor Avenue. And he's in her yard and he urinates on one of her trees, just like an old dog would. Now, the lady came out of the house and told him to zip it up and get out of her yard and stop pissing on her trees. And he threatened her. told her that he knows where she lives. Now, he would later tell the police he told her that in the hopes that she wouldn't call the police on him, but she did. Now, the police got there and they found him about a block south of there, over on Westway Street and Sabra Road. And of course, he was, according to the officers, he smelled of intoxicants, had bloodshot eyes, and he was passed out asleep in the grass, so that's probably a good indicator. Now, he had some felony drug possessions and some assaults, other traffic violations. He just an unhappy man, evidently. It's July the 4th, 2020. Female caller dials 911, tells the dispatcher that there's a drunk guy at the parking lot of the Home Depot. Now, this is a few minutes after midnight on July the 4th, and there are impromptu little car show over on the parking lot. So people are out there showing off their cars and sitting there shooting the breeze. And that no account unhappy fella had pulled up. I guess he just couldn't resist a chance to try to make other people miserable. Officer Diaz, lieutenant, said he remembered the call. He said he heard it go out. He started pulling that way, just out of boredom, because the midnight shift usually is kind of quiet. Now, at 11 minutes after midnight, Officer Dia advises he's on the scene. Now, the initial location of the stop is going to be on the northwest side of the store, where the flowers and the outdoor equipment's usually sitting. Bad guy sees Officer Dia. He had turned and started walking away. Officer Dia told him to stop and then started following behind him. And I'm sure that Officer Dia is just playing for time, because he figures there's going to be another officer or two show up here in just a second. Well, the suspect walks behind and in between some of the flower displays. And as Officer Dia turns to go behind that same flower display, suspect turns and he's armed with a pistol. Now, he fires multiple rounds. Officer Dia is able to draw his firearm and he's able to return fire.
I turned around. I didn't hear what he said to the police officer. He shouted something at him and then pulled out a gun and just started firing at the police officer.
Now, Officer Dia was hit almost immediately with one of the first rounds. Now, even though they're basically facing each other, somehow or another, that round that the suspect fires, it gets in that area around the armpit. And we all know how many of these stories we've had the similar type wound. Bullet finds that vulnerable area. Now, Officer Dia collapses and the suspect takes off running. Now, the suspect runs southbound along the west side of the building, and he's heading towards a patch of woods there on the south side of the Home Depot. And then Officer Dia puts out his radio communication to the dispatcher about telling his family he loves them.
Depot, 120-2128, code 3, 1035 West Lexus at Home Depot. 118 something is my family alone. I can't copy. 118 something, family alone. Yeah. We got crews coming. I'm getting medical.
So the first officers on the scene, they load Officer Dia up in a squad car and they take him to the hospital. Officer Dia doesn't make it. He dies there at the hospital. Now, Toledo police had surrounded the patch of woods where the suspect was at. Now, I don't know if it's that first patch of trees at the edge of the parking lot there at the Home Depot, or if he crossed through that patch and went to that next larger patch of woods. I'm not sure which one. But in any event, about 3:15, so about 3 hours after the initial shooting, police said they heard a single gunshot. Now, they put a drone up over the woods and then they sent in the canine and they located the suspect. Now, he had one gunshot wound to the head, so it was a self-inflicted wound. I guess our suspect finally figured out just how far he could go before his own conscience would finally bother him. I just wish he'd got a conscience before he shot Officer Dia. Officer Anthony Hussein Dia. End of watch, July 4th, 2020.